You are ready to start taking payments from freelance clients. But how do you do it? Today, I'm going to answer this question that comes directly from you, our viewers, and help you set up your payment processing and systems like a pro. Hi, I'm Katie, and my business partner Alana and I are on a mission to help other artists like us make more money from their art. If that sounds like something you need, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos we release every week. When you're running your own art business, you suddenly have to wear a lot of hats that you probably haven't before. And one of those hats is the money hat. You are in charge of collecting your money, making sure your payments are on time, and setting your policies around what happens if you aren't paid on time, and so forth. That sounds like a lot, and I'm not gonna lie, it can be a bit of a pain, but thankfully there are systems we can put in place to make this a lot easier and more hands-off. Let's start with payment terms first. Your first conversation about payment terms with a client should probably happen when you are ironing out the final details of a project. So if you have a client that has said, yes, I accept your estimate, I want to work with you, let's get started, you say, great, here's my contract and terms, and I'll send along your first invoice right now. In your contract, you should specify how and when you want to get paid and what happens if they don't pay you on time. Side note, if you're like, where do I get an awesome contract like that? We've got you. We actually sat down with our lawyer and created a contract kit. And it's full of everything that you'll need for freelance projects through art licensing, and I'm gonna link that down below. But let's get back to the terms. Typically, we like to split our butts into two cheeks. All my bloopers are butt related. What's wrong with me? Typically, we like to split our payments into two parts. So 50% before the project starts. So before you do any work, you get a 50% deposit. And then we like to do 50% at the end when you're wrapping up the project. Depending on the amount you're making or the client you're working with, you may want to split up your payment differently, and that is totally fine. Remember, this is your business and you get to make the rules. However, I do think it's a good rule of thumb to not make things more complicated than you need them to be. For example, if the whole amount that you're making is $600, you might not need to split that up into multiple payments. But again, that's up to you. I do want to note that sometimes you'll encounter larger companies that have more strict policies about how they like to pay out their vendors. So if you ask a company for 50% upfront, which is totally standard, and they come back and they say, I'm sorry, it's our policy that we only pay our vendors at the end, you have a couple of options of what you can do. One, you can agree to their terms. Two, you can try and come to some sort of middle ground, some kind of compromise. Or three, you can totally stick to your guns and say, I'm sorry, it's my policy that I get paid 50% upfront before any work begins. All of those options are valid. You just need to decide what works best for you and your business. I've definitely stuck to my guns in this situation before, and after a few emails with accounts receivable, suddenly they were able to pay 50% upfront. So just ask for what you want. Always ask and stick up for the things that are important to you and your business. And you never know what policies are a little bit more flexible than they may seem. Another thing to consider is how quickly you want payments to be made. Generally, if you're asking for a portion of the project fee to be paid upfront before you do any work, which is totally standard practice, you're going to need to ask the client to pay that as soon as they get the invoice if they want the project to get started. So I generally like to say something like, here's a link to your invoice. As soon as the payment is processed, I'll begin sketching. Alana and I also really like to include language in our contracts that says if payments are delayed, then that's going to affect the calendar and the due dates, and it might push things out further. For the payment at the end of the project, you can handle this in several ways. You can ask for payment before you turn over the files, or you can give them all the files, give them the deliverables, and then ask them to pay you within a certain time frame. Usually the time frames for payments to be made are called net, and then whatever number of days they have to pay you from the date they get the invoice. So net 15 means they have 15 days from when they receive the invoice to pay you, and net 30 means they have 30 days. You can decide what works best for you, but whatever you do, just make sure you specify exactly when you expect the payment. You should also have terms in your contract that say what happens if they don't pay in time. So what we typically do is charge a percentage of the project fee on top of the project fee for every week that the client is late in paying us. All right, so we talked about basic terms. Now let's transition to logistics of how you get paid and send invoices and all of that stuff. Personally, we love QuickBooks, which is an accounting software. And within QuickBooks, you can send an invoice to a client. It'll send them an email with a link to the invoice. They can pay that invoice just by clicking on the link, and they can use whatever methods for payment that you've made available to them. You can choose several different ways to get paid, but our favorite is ACH transfer, which is basically moving money from the client's bank directly into your bank. And the reason that we like it so much is usually there's a very small or no transaction fee for this. Another option is you can let your client pay by card, which is very convenient for them, but it usually comes with a processing fee that's usually around 3%, so it's good to keep that in mind. Another option is they could just pay with a check and mail it right to your address. A great way to get a client to pay the way that you want is to incentivize them. You could say, sure, you can pay by card, but that's going to be an extra 3% on top of your project fee. ACH transfers, however, are free. All of these payments can be set up in QuickBooks, so it can be done online and the money can just go straight into your bank account. Now, let me just back up for a second and let's talk about invoices. An invoice is just an official receipt, but you send it to your client before they pay. So it's just saying, here's what you owe and here's how to pay me. Typically, the information that you want to put on an invoice is your name or your business name and your contact information, a list of what you're charging your customer, and a very clear final total that they owe. Tell them exactly what they're going to pay you, and then tell them how they can pay you. So put your information on there about how you like to get paid. A lot of money management software, including QuickBooks, have really great templates for invoices. One of my favorite things is you can also set up automatic email reminders that will automatically send to your client and tell them, you gotta pay by X date if they haven't paid you yet. These are really all common features for any payment management system. So in addition to QuickBooks, we've seen people use Square or PayPal, Dubsado, FreshBooks, Bonsai, the list goes on. It doesn't really matter what platform you use. We just suggest that you find something that allows you to take online payments and that sends out automatic payment reminders if possible. You just want to be able to take as much work off your plate as possible. Finally, let's talk about what happens if someone doesn't pay you at all. First of all, hopefully you won't be in this situation at all because we know you're smart and you waited to do any work before you got your first installment. But we all know that even if you do that, you can still get ghosted down the road. And dang, that sucks. First and foremost, you should be sending those email reminders that say, hey, don't forget, you owe me X amount of money by X date. And if I don't get that money by that date, I'm going to charge you this percentage on top of your fee. So pay me. Be serious, be confident, tell them what's going to happen if you don't get your money. After the deadline passes, take a deep breath. I know you're upset. I know it's super annoying. But email them, call them, say, hey, guess what? You're racking up this amount of money every single week that you're not paying me. It's also a really good idea to look around on the company's website, see if there's a phone number or an email address for an accounts person, and then just contact them directly and say, hey, I'm owed this amount of money, but I've been talking to this person. I did this project. It was due X date. Where's my money? Finally, if you just don't hear from them, nothing, you think they're fully trying to skip town, take your money and run, then it's time to bring in a lawyer. But the great thing is that since you're super smart and you used a contract that specified exactly how much you were owed and your client signed it and it said by X date and it said your penalty amounts on it, this is going to be a pretty cut and dry case. It's you were clearly owed this money by your client. They said they were going to pay you and they didn't. Even if it's a cut and dry case, it's still just never a scenario that you want to be in. I totally understand that. So that's why we do everything we can up until this point to avoid this situation. Okay, so that's the worst case scenario. And I don't want to end on that note. So let's think about the best case scenario. You get paid exactly what you want, quickly and on your own terms, and using automated systems so you don't have to do a lot of work and follow-up. That's awesome. That's exactly what we want this to be like, and that is what we're here to help you do. Yes, let's end on that note, shall we? Let us know in the comments if you have any other payment related questions, and make sure you're subscribed to our channel because we're dropping videos just like this every single week. We're artists who mean business, and we'll see you in the next video.